Hello, and welcome to Miss McGee's at Fremont College Critical Thinking and Analysis class online. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about argument. Unit 9, we're talking about argument. Now, argument is really the meat of this course. It's the crux of what we've been talking about all up until now, how to formulate a good argument. When we think of argument, we think of fighting. But in critical thinking classes and elsewhere, argument really means a series of cohesive or coherent statements leading from a premise or thesis, as we often call it, to a conclusion. That's what an argument is. And when we talk about persuasion, we talk about people who can present the best argument. Just as an example, say, for example, ID checks are required or should be required for gun sales. That's a thesis statement I'm offering. ID checks should be required for gun sales. First of all, we have to figure out whose point of view is that. Is it better to check ID before selling a gun to someone? Or is it better to wait and see if it gets into the wrong hands? What is the real issue? What's the controversy? Every argument has a controversial issue at its core. So what is the controversy here? Many people say that guns should be unregulated, and the Second Amendment, guarantees we have that right, but others believe in gun control. So when you're talking about an argument, you're talking about two opposing sides. The book does a very good job of comparing a report to an argument, and that's on page 247. There's a series of paragraphs, and the book asks you, and I'll ask you, to determine which is a report and which is an argument. And what is the difference between an argument and a report? The key thing to remember about an argument is it's your attempt to persuade someone to your point of view. You have a bias, and that's okay. In an argument, a bias is okay. It's your attempt to persuade. A report, on the other hand, is simply a matter of stating facts, figures, statistics perhaps, just laying it out. Think of a report as something that you would see in a newspaper. Just facts and figures, allegedly no bias, but as we know, many times we see a bias in a news report, but it's different than an argument in that it's not attempting to persuade you. So on page 247, it goes through a series of statements. Just as an example, I'll offer one and you do the rest. The first one is data presented and explained. That's one thing that you know about a report. Whereas an argument is a thesis, and we talked about a thesis. A thesis is something that can be proven. Another aspect of a report is it offers support to confirm the data and facts, evidence, statistics, whereas an argument, reasons are given to support the thesis. Reasons or evidence. That's another word for reasons. In a report, it offers a hypothesis for interpreting the data, may or may not side with one hypothesis or the other. But with an argument, as I said before, it clearly has a bias. You clearly have a point of view in an argument. In a report, there's a summary of findings in a manner that leaves final assessment up to the reader. But in an argument, the summary argues for a conclusion or it reinforces the thesis that you began with. An argument has a different structure than a report. First of all, there's reasons. When we talk about an argument, we have to present reasons for the point of view that we've put out, and then a conclusion. And a conclusion is a clear statement of what the argument intends to prove. It's just like the thesis, only often a conclusion will happen at the end of your argument. Not always, but often that's the way we wrap up our argument, with a conclusion. Also, in terms of crafting an argument, you need to remember deductive versus inductive reasoning. Deductive versus inductive reasoning. Now, the words themselves say what they are. Deductive reasoning is one in which you begin with a big idea or a generality and you narrow it down, like the case in the gun control. We need tighter gun control that would lead to laws about checking ID before selling guns. Inductive reasoning begins with a specific instance. As an example, Joe was allowed to buy a gun even though he just got out of prison for attempted murder. Obviously, we need to check IDs. Guns must be controlled. So we start already with a specific, and we reason why to support it. What are the argument's strengths and weaknesses? Now, when you're going through these, you need to identify what are the strengths of the argument and what are the weaknesses. Are the reasons adequate to support the conclusion? Are there any hidden assumptions? Remember we talked about hidden assumptions. in an argument? Are there any general ideas that are ambiguous? And when I say ambiguous, I mean not clear, unclear, lack clarity, ambiguous. Are they ambiguous or slanted to incite prejudice? Now, later on, we're going to talk about the different types of fallacies in arguments, and one of them is an attempt to appeal to emotion, and that's, we can say, inciting prejudice. That might be that kind of a fallacious argument. Are there fallacies in the reasoning? And we'll talk about that more. And a fallacy, just think of a fallacy as a mistake or a mistake in reasoning. Okay, a fallacy is something that's false or a mistake. Is there any important information missing? And is there any information that's false, contradictory, or irreconcilable? Now, for your e-cafe topic, I want you all to write a letter of complaint. This is your opportunity to grab some power. Think about an issue that maybe have been bothering you for a while, and think about how you would formulate a letter. I did this in my on-ground class, and we had some wonderful examples. We had people that complained about their gym, and we had people that complained about their homeowners association, and one lady even wrote a letter to her son that's living with her, and we got a big kick out of that. So think of a complaint that you have. In the e-cafe, of course, you know how to do this, but I'm just going to reiterate it. Click on Respond, and then add and remove attachments at the bottom of the dialog. Browse for your completed letter on your computer, select it, and attach that file. Please read as many letters as possible and provide feedback about the arguments you find. Are reasons clearly stated? Justify or explain the conclusion? Why or why not? So when you're crafting this letter, and it doesn't have to be a long letter, but obviously it's in the letter form, as in you have to think about who you're writing this letter to. If you're going to complain about a product perhaps that you bought, you have to think about who you would write the letter to. Would you write it to the retailer or would you write it to the manufacturer? Okay. Once you've decided who would have the most influence to solve your problem, then you have to start with a conclusion. You have to start with a conclusion and then list the reasons. As an example, say you bought some kind of hand tool that didn't work at Target. So you start with the conclusion that the hand tool I bought at Target is defective. That would be your thesis or your opening statement in your letter. And then you would list the reasons why it's defective or why you believe it is defective. You don't need to try to figure out an answer or a solution to this problem in particular. The key is the practice that you're doing right now is to be able to state a conclusion and then list reasons as to why you can support your conclusion. But it's done in letter form. It's done in letter form because it's a lot easier to think in terms of something that's bothering you, right? And then someone out there, somebody that we don't know, but something that perhaps you want to kind of vent to a little bit. So, it's easy. Make it, I would say, a couple of paragraphs. Again, I have to reiterate, you check your spelling, check the grammar, make sure that's perfect, and go ahead and attach it and submit it. That's your e-cafe for Unit 9. Now, assignment based on the feedback you received in the e-cafe, because that's what's going to lead to, you're going to post that in the discussion thread. Once you get feedback from your classmates, revise your letter of complaint and then submit it to me. Okay? So first you're going to post it in the discussion thread, receive your feedback, and remember you have to respond to at least two people that respond to you, and then revise your letter according to the comments you get, and then submit it to me. Okay, and in giving critiques of the letter, make sure that you ask questions that maybe be readily apparent. Once you read the letter, ask a question that you think that perhaps the writer of the letter should include, or maybe think through a little bit further. Okay, so that's the purpose of this exercise. It's really critical thinking, but it's in the form of an argument. I know an easy one is perhaps you have a wrong billing on your credit card statement or a letter from your credit card company. That's kind of easy to talk about, and start with the conclusion and then add the reasons. So those are just a couple, but read as many as you can, get some ideas, keep it true to life if you can, and you'll do well, as you always do. So that's the end of Unit 9, and I will see you for Unit 10. Bye.